My name is Ethan Walker. A few years ago, I started working at a small software company in Charleston, West Virginia. It was my first proper office job, so I tried my best to get along with everyone. I was always the kind of person who could talk to strangers easily, and within a few weeks, most of my coworkers felt like friends. But there was one guy in our office who never really became part of the group. His name was Daniel Reed. Daniel was quiet. Not shy in a normal way, but quiet in a way that made people uncomfortable. Every morning he was the first person at the office. I would walk in with my coffee, and he would already be sitting at his desk, typing silently, his eyes fixed on the monitor. During lunch, he never joined anyone. When people joked around, he never smiled. When someone asked him a question, he answered only if it was absolutely necessary. He never asked for coffee, never ordered food, never joined birthday parties, never even complained. He worked like a machine, then left alone. At first, I thought maybe he was just introverted, but after a while, his behavior started to bother everyone. Then came his birthday. Someone from HR found out the date, and the whole office decided to surprise him. We bought a cake, some small gifts, and waited for him before work started. When Daniel walked in, we all shouted, "Surprise!" But he didn't react the way a normal person would. He froze. His eyes moved from the cake to the candles, then to our faces. For a second, he looked almost scared. Then his expression changed into irritation. No smile, no thank you, nothing. He didn't cut the cake. He didn't touch the gifts. He simply walked past us, sat at his desk, and started working. After that day, most people stopped trying with him. But I noticed something else. Daniel was changing. When I first met him, he looked normal. Thin, maybe, but healthy enough. But within a few weeks, he started losing weight at a frightening speed. His cheeks sank inward. His eyes looked hollow, as if someone had pushed them deep into his skull. His skin became pale and dry. His hands looked like bones wrapped in paper. Every day, he looked less like a living person. And then one Monday morning, Daniel didn't come to work. The next day, his desk was empty again. A week later, someone new was sitting in his chair. No one asked much about him. In fact, a few coworkers seemed relieved. But I couldn't forget the way Daniel looked during his last few days at the office. Something was wrong with him, terribly wrong. So I went to my manager and asked if he knew what happened. He sighed and said, Daniel resigned, went back to his family's place near Briar Creek. Was he sick? I asked. My manager shrugged. Maybe, but Ethan, don't get involved. Some people don't want help. Still, he gave me a phone number from Daniel's employee file. That evening, I called. An older man answered. When I introduced myself as Daniel's former coworker, the man went silent for a moment. Then he said, I'm Daniel's father. I asked how Daniel was doing. The old man's voice dropped. He's not doing good, son, not good at all. Something in the way he said it made my chest tighten. I asked for the address, and the next day I took 2 days off work and drove toward Briar Creek, a small mountain town about 40 minutes outside Charleston. The road to Daniel's family home was narrow and surrounded by thick woods. The further I drove, the quieter everything became. No traffic, no people, just old trees leaning over the road like they were watching me pass. Daniel's father, Mr. Reed, met me outside a weather-beaten farmhouse. He looked exhausted. Without saying much, he led me inside. The house smelled like medicine, damp wood, and something old that I couldn't identify. Then, I saw Daniel. He was lying on a bed near the window, and I swear for a moment, I thought I was looking at a corpse. His body had become almost skeletal. His wrists were as thin as sticks. His collarbones pressed sharply against his skin. His face was nothing but bone, shadow, and 2 sunken eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. I had seen sick people before, but I had never seen a living man look that close to death. I sat beside him and said, Daniel, it's Ethan from work. He didn't answer. His eyes moved slightly, but his lips stayed shut. I asked Mr. Reed what disease Daniel had. He shook his head. Doctors don't know. We took him everywhere. Blood tests, scans, specialists. Every report came back normal. "That's impossible," I whispered. "That's what the doctors said too." Mr. Reed told me that one doctor looked at Daniel's reports, then looked at Daniel lying in bed, and actually asked if they had brought the wrong patient's test results. Everything was normal on paper, but Daniel was dying in front of them. Mr. Reed said they had asked Daniel again and again if something had happened to him, but Daniel refused to speak. He just stared at the window like he was waiting for something to appear there. I don't know why, but anger rose in me. I walked back to Daniel's bed and said, "You need to tell us what happened. Your parents are watching you disappear. If you stay silent, how is anyone supposed to help you?" At first, Daniel didn't move. Then tears began sliding down the sides of his face. His dry fingers gripped my wrist, and in a voice so weak I had to lean close to hear him, he said, "It followed me back." Then he told us everything. Daniel grew up in Briar Creek. As a kid, he was reckless. He snuck out at night, climbed abandoned barns, wandered through the woods, and did anything that made people call him brave. By the time he was a teenager, he was obsessed with proving he wasn't afraid of anything. One summer night, Daniel and his friend Mark were sitting behind an old general store with a few other boys. Daniel kept bragging that there wasn't a place in Briar Creek he wouldn't go after dark. Mark laughed and said, "Brave people don't have to keep telling everyone they're brave." That embarrassed Daniel, so he challenged Mark. "Name one thing," Daniel said. "Anything. If I don't do it, I'll admit I'm the biggest coward in this town." Mark went quiet. Then he said, "Go to the old well behind the South Ridge. Bring back a bucket of water." Everyone stopped laughing. The old well was not a normal place. It sat beyond the tree line on the south side of Briar Creek, surrounded by thorn bushes, dead weeds, and a collapsed ring of stones. Nobody used it anymore. Nobody even walked near it if they could avoid it. Local people called it the Blood Well. The story was that almost 80 years earlier, a woman named Martha Bell had killed herself beside that well. Some people said she slit her own throat. Others said someone murdered her and threw her body in. Either way, after her death, strange things started happening there. Hunters saw red stains on the stones even when it hadn't rained. Children claimed they heard a woman crying from inside the well. A farmer once said he saw a pale face looking up from the water, smiling at him. After that, people stayed away, but Daniel was young, proud, and stupid. That night, after his parents fell asleep, Daniel slipped out of the house. Mark was waiting near the road with an old metal bucket and a rope tied to the handle. As they walked toward the South Ridge, Mark kept telling him to turn back. Daniel refused. The forest was silent that night, too silent. No insects, no owls, not even wind. When they reached the clearing, the well stood in the moonlight like a black mouth in the earth. Mark stayed far back. Daniel took the bucket and walked forward alone. He admitted that by then he was scared, but pride pushed him onward. He tied the rope around his wrist, lowered the bucket into the well, and heard it hit the water below. Then he pulled it up. But when the bucket reached the rim, it wasn't full of water. It was full of blood, fresh, dark, warm blood. Daniel screamed and dropped the bucket back into the well. From far behind him, Mark shouted, "What happened?" Daniel didn't answer. He told himself it was a trick of the moonlight. Maybe rust, maybe muddy water. So he pulled the bucket up again, blood. This time the smell hit him metallic, thick, human. Then something whispered from inside the well. "You can't take from me." Daniel froze. The voice came again, closer this time. "You can't take anything from me. Not the water, not your life." Then the whisper moved behind his ear. "You won't leave with your blood." Daniel ran. But as he turned, his foot caught on a loose stone. He fell hard, cutting his palm open on a broken piece of rock. Blood spilled onto the dirt near the well. Mark helped him up, and they ran home. Daniel never told his parents the truth. He wrapped his hand in a towel and said he had slipped on the way to the bathroom. A few weeks later, Daniel left Briar Creek for college. Years passed. He finished school, got a job in Charleston, and slowly convinced himself that the blood well had been nothing more than fear and imagination. Until he returned home for a weekend visit. One afternoon, he ran into Mark outside a gas station. They laughed about old times and Mark brought up the well. Daniel asked him, "That night, when I pulled up the bucket, did you see what was inside?" Mark looked confused. "Water," he said. "You pulled up water, then you freaked out and dropped it." Daniel's stomach turned cold. That evening, curiosity got the better of him. He went back to the old well in daylight. It looked smaller than he remembered, less terrifying. Just old stones, moss, and muddy water below. There was even an old bucket lying nearby. Daniel lowered it into the well and pulled it up. Water, only water, no blood. No whisper. He laughed at himself, went home, and tried to forget it again. But the next morning he woke up feeling weak, not tired, as if he had not slept at all. His mother cooked him a heavy breakfast, but he could barely eat. The next day he felt worse. By the time he returned to Charleston, his body felt hollow. His roommates noticed immediately. One of them said, "Man, what happened to you? You look like you lost 10 pounds. Daniel checked his weight that afternoon. He had lost 15 pounds in 3 days. He went to a doctor, then another. Every test came back clean. The doctors told him he might be stressed, maybe anemic, maybe exhausted. So Daniel bought vitamins, vegetables, liver, protein shakes. Everything they suggested. Nothing helped. Every morning, he woke up thinner. Then his roommates started hearing sounds from his room at night. A low laugh, a wet sucking noise, sometimes scratching at the floorboards. Daniel didn't believe them at first. He thought they were trying to scare him. So one night, he decided to stay awake. He drank coffee until his hands shook. He kept the television on low. He forced his eyes open until around 3 in the morning. Then the room turned cold. Not cool. Cold. Like someone had opened a freezer beside his bed. Daniel looked toward the window outside. The night was still. Not a single leaf moved. Then he heard it. A soft, wet sound at the foot of his bed. He opened his eyes fully. A woman was crouched near his feet. Her hair was long, filthy, and tangled over her face. Her skin looked gray in the glow of the television. Her fingers were thin and crooked. Her mouth was pressed against his ankle. She was drinking from him. Daniel tried to scream, but no sound came out. The woman slowly lifted her head. Her teeth were sharp and stained dark. Then she smiled. Daniel looked at his ankle, expecting to see bite marks, blood, torn skin. There was nothing. No wound, no scratch, but his body felt weaker than ever. The woman crawled backward toward the window, still smiling. Then she leapt, but she did not hit the glass. Her body broke apart into a cloud of dark smoke and slipped through the cracks around the window frame. Daniel convinced himself it had been a nightmare, until it happened again. This time he woke up while she was feeding. He sat up and screamed, "Who are you? Why are you doing this to me?" The woman stopped. Then she laughed. It was not a human laugh. It sounded like choking, crying, and bones snapping all at once. She said, "You came back to the well." Daniel could not move. She crawled closer. "I tasted you once," she whispered. "When your blood fell on my ground, I waited for you. Years and years I waited." Her mouth stretched wider. "When you came back, I found you again." Then she leaned near his face and whispered, "I will drink until there is nothing left." After that, Daniel quit his job and returned to Briar Creek. But going home did not save him. Every night he felt her near the window. Sometimes he saw her standing outside, staring in with those black, hungry eyes. That was when Daniel stopped speaking. He believed if he told anyone, she would come for them too. Because before disappearing each night, she always whispered the same warning: "Whoever hears your story will belong to me next." When Daniel finished speaking, the room felt colder. His father looked terrified. I didn't know what to believe, but I knew one thing: Daniel believed every word. That night, Mr. Reed and I drove to see an old woman named Miss Abigail, who lived alone in a cabin near the edge of the county. People in Briar Creek said she knew things no church wanted to talk about. Old mountain things, blood things, dead things. When we told her about Daniel, she did not look surprised. She only asked, "Did his blood touch the ground near the well?" Mr. Reed looked at me. I said, "Yes." Miss Abigail closed her eyes. "That well is not haunted by a ghost," she said. "It is fed by something older." She told us that some spirits do not live on prayers, memory, or fear. Some live on blood. And once such a thing tastes a person's blood, it remembers them forever. Daniel had escaped only because he left Briar Creek before it could fully attach itself to him. But when he returned to the well years later, he gave it a path back into his life. Miss Abigail gave us 2 small cloth charms. One was for Daniel. She said it had to stay tied to his wrist at all times. The other had to be thrown into the well at exactly 3 in the morning. "Do not look inside the well after you throw it," she warned. "No matter what you hear." At 3 a.m., Mr. Reed and I went to the blood well. I have never felt darkness like that. The trees seemed bent toward us. The air smelled like wet dirt and iron. As we approached the well, something inside it began to breathe. Mr. Reed's hands shook as he handed me the charm. I threw it into the black opening. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then a scream exploded from the well. It was a woman's scream, but it was too loud, too deep, too full of rage to belong to any living person. The ground trembled. Something splashed below. Then came the crying. A horrible, choking cry from deep inside the earth. Mr. Reed grabbed my arm and shouted, "Don't look." So we ran. When we got back, we tied the second charm around Daniel's wrist. After that night, Daniel stopped getting worse. But he never got better. His body remained thin and fragile. He could not return to work. He barely left his bed. Some days he spoke a little. Most days he only stared out the window. He told me once that she still comes. Not inside the room. Not anymore. But outside. Standing beyond the glass. Watching, waiting. He said she presses her face to the window at night and smiles at the charm on his wrist. And sometimes when the house is silent, he hears her whisper, "One day you'll take it off." Daniel still lives in that farmhouse near Briar Creek. He is alive. But only barely, and every night he sleeps with his wrist tied tightly to the bedpost, terrified that in his sleep he might remove the only thing keeping her away. Because the thing in the blood well is patient, it waited years for Daniel once. It can wait again. And all of it happened because one young man wanted to prove he was brave. But some places do not test your courage. They mark you, they taste you, and once they do, they never forget. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more dark folklore, true horror, and nightmare stories from the forgotten corners of the world.